so let's go ahead and make a heads up display now so we can actually see our score and a health bar. Instead of just printing all the values to the corner, which isn't really polished, it kind of looks incomplete and it can kind of start to make no sense at all what values are being printed here if you have a lot of things you're keeping track of, right? It can get kind of chaotic. So I want to make a heads up display to just make it read a little bit better to a player and also maybe feel slightly more polished. It's going to be a very simple heads up display, but it does help make it feel just a little bit more polished, a little bit more finished and real, more like a game. And to do that, I'm in my blueprint folder already. And I'm going to go ahead and just right click. And instead of going up to blueprint class, I'm actually going to go to user interface. And the very bottom option in here is widget blueprint. Okay. And this didn't used to happen in Unreal 4, but when you click on widget blueprint, it actually has one more option here for you to pick. Just go ahead and click user widget. That's totally fine. In fact, yeah, that's all we really want to do. User widget. And I'm going to go ahead and just call it HUD for heads up display. Because it's kind of a widget, I don't really need to call it blueprint because it's a little bit different. It's a widget blueprint, so I can just call it heads up display. That'll be enough for me. I'm gonna double click that to open it up. Yeah, so this is a little bit different than what we've seen, but again, what I'm working on is in the middle. I can add stuff from the left, so there's a whole bunch of stuff I can select. Once it's added, you'll see it show up in the hierarchy here. And then once I have things, I can select them and change things about them in the details, right? So it's really, even though it looks a little bit different, we still have all the same stuff, or at least the same kind of setup that we're used to, right? And really what I want right now, I'm going to search in my palette. I'm going to look for a canvas panel. And I'll drag and drop that onto my graph here, my grid. And now I have kind of something that can be my screen space here, right? And it really doesn't matter. It says it's 1280 by 720. It really doesn't matter what that says. The most important thing is that that's 16 by 19, which most monitors are 16 by 19. Maybe you're super cool and you have an ultra wide monitor. But for now, we can just keep this 16 by 19 because there's actually kind of a neat built-in feature here with Unreal that it can resize our heads-up display and try and keep everything approximately where it should be on a different resolution or even a different aspect ratio, right? So maybe you want your aspect ratio to actually be 4:3 for whatever reason. You could still build it on a 16 by 9, and when you play it on 4:3, it should bring everything in to where it needs to go properly, as long as you set it up properly. So that's all fine. I have my canvas panel. And then in the palette as well, I'm going to search for a horizontal box. Horizontal box. I'll drag that out. And again, this is kind of my screen space. So anything I want to add actually has to go into this canvas panel. You see, I can't drop it here, but I can here. So if I want my score to be, I don't know, maybe I want it like, where should it go? Maybe down here. I'll try down here. I can do that. As soon as I add it, I get this weird kind of flower looking thing up here. This is my anchor point, and this is what I was talking about. As long as I set this properly, whatever my aspect ratio or resolution is, if that changes, it should keep everything about the same as long as I anchor it properly, okay? So right now the anchor point is up in this corner, but I have my score down in this corner, or what will be my score. So in order to fix this, all I have to do is just go over to the details with that horizontal box selected, right? Go into the details, and sure enough, one of the first things here is anchors. And if I click on the drop down here that says anchors, I get a bunch of options. I can click on this one to move it down to that corner. I could also just click and drag the anchor itself if I wanted it to be a very specific spot. But if I want to just make sure it's in that position, I can click on that and I'm good. And then I'm going to zoom in a little bit here and kind of move around so I can make this horizontal box just a little bit larger. And I usually try and make it quite a bit larger than what I might need. Just because you never know, maybe at one point I do have a level where they could collect hundreds of coins, so they'll have a score in the thousands or something. So I will make this fairly large, I think. And that should be fine for now. And a horizontal box, at least for the score, probably isn't necessary, but I still think it's nice to do this because I can actually use this horizontal box to contain text and variables and things. So I'm going to go back up to my palette and I'm going to search for text. And it brings up a few things. I just want the one that's called text. Just text, only text, nothing else. Just the one that says text. I'm going to click and drag that out, and I can grab or drag that wherever I want. But as soon as I go to my horizontal box, it doesn't matter if I come at it from this side or this side or this side. It's always going to snap to that corner. So make sure yours snaps, and then go ahead and let go of the mouse, and now it's actually part of my horizontal box, which is nice, again, because then if I wanted to, I could move my horizontal box, and that's going to go with it. Which is really nice. Okay, I'm going to click on that text again. And if I want to change what it says, I can look in the details. Again, anything I want to change is usually on the right side under details. Right here I have content and text. Right now it says text block. I want to make this a, whoops, not DS. I'm not making a game for the Nintendo DS. I want to make it say score. And then I'm going to do a colon and then a space. So it's actually going to have that space there, which is nice, because then when I actually have it saying what my score is, it's going to be properly spaced apart. So I have the word score, a colon, and then a space. Okay? And then under appearance right here, it has like the color and opacity if I wanted to change that color. So maybe I could have my score, I don't know, be, well, I don't know what color. Do I even really want to change it? Maybe not. Maybe I'll just keep it white, or maybe you could do some shade of like gray or something. I don't know. I think white's gonna be just, well, maybe I'll make it kind of a dark gray. I don't know what's gonna really stand out in my level, so maybe you can decide. I'm gonna stick with white, I guess. Okay, and then what's funny about changing anything with the font? There is a thing called font here, but I have to actually click the drop down. It's like probably the most important thing you'd want to change about the text other than what it says. And you have to drop it down. It's kind of weird, but just click on that arrow next to font. And you could import more fonts if you had them. Roboto, I guess, is the default. That's totally fine. I'm going to go ahead and change the size to, I don't know, what does like 72 look like? That's too big. Let's go with, I don't know, 56, 48. That seems pretty good. I'll go with 48. Yeah, that seems fine. Okay, and then once that's in there and you got it looking how you want, I'm going to go ahead and drag another text out. And if I drag it to the horizontal box, you'll see it snapping right next to my other text, which is great. And because I have that space, it's already giving it a little bit of space there, so it doesn't look like it's all one word or something, right? And this is actually going to be what my score is. So for now, I can just test it out. I'm going to go ahead and just type in 0 because my score is 0. And then I need to make it probably the same font size. So I think I landed on, was it 48? That looks pretty good to me. And I'll just keep it white for now. If I have to change the color after playing around in the level, I can do that. But I'll keep it white for now. Okay. So that's good. That's going to be on the screen when I'm finished making my HUD. But for now, there's nothing telling this text to actually update with my score. Okay. And if I look in the details again, if I have that 0 selected, and I look in the details, next to where I typed in 0, there's this thing called bind. And this is where I can create some sort of binding. I can bind a value to this text to update the text according to whatever variable or whatever it is I'm feeding into it, right? I can bind a value to it to update it on the screen, right? So I'm going to go ahead and click on bind and say create binding. When I do that, it's going to take me over to my graph. If you're a little bit confused here, you can always go back between the designer and the graph up here. So if I didn't want to go here quite yet and I wanted to keep messing with the font size and color, I could click on designer and do all that stuff and then go back to my graph, and there it is. Okay, it's a little bit confusing that it's there instead of here, but that's how you swap back and forth, is designer and graph. Okay, but here I have my get text 0. and my return node. And I usually just spread these apart a little bit so I have a little bit of room to work with here. And all I need to do is cast to my character. Okay. And then as blankety blank character, I'm going to get my score. And this one's pretty easy. All I have to do is connect score to return value. Now, be careful here, okay? Because if I drag this out and I'm a little bit above the return value, it has a green check mark that says add pin to node. And if I do that, it's going to add a new pin. I don't want to do that, okay? And if I'm a little bit below, it's going to do the same thing. So I don't want to do that. I want to drag score right to return variable, or return value, I mean. And it should say, hey, do you want to convert that integer to text? Heck yes, I do. So I'm going to let go of the mouse. And there it adds in that extra node that says to text. And that's perfect. That's exactly what I need. I'll go ahead and compile that. And I'm going to get an error because I don't have an object on my cast. And I need to have an object. So normally, like on my coin or on my spikes or something, right? Here's my coin. I was able to plug something in to my cast, right? I have other actor there on my overlap, right? But my HUD doesn't have anything to plug into here. So I need to satisfy this pin somehow. And the way to do this is just kind of something you'll get used to. You just got to do it. If I drag from object, I can do get player pawn. Get player pawn. Again, it's just kind of a weird, quirky thing you got to do with Unreal. It just has to know what the object is, which is the player pawn. And since I only have one player, it knows that it's the index 0, which is player 1. And that's awesome. If I did have multiple players, I could do player 2 by typing in 1 here, right? But now if I compile, there's no more errors. So I can compile and save. Okay. Let's go back to the designer and let's tackle the health bar now. So again, it's going to be mostly the same. I'm going to go up to my palette and search for a horizontal box. And I'm going to click and drag this one up to kind of the top center. I want it to be roughly the same size, at least in the height. Maybe a little bit skinnier, right, and longer, because it's going to be a health bar. Maybe something like that. And I'm going to go ahead and in my palette again, search for text. And drag out text. Now, you could put the text in here and have it snap. And then over in the details, change it to say health. And then do a colon and a space. And that would be perfect. You could also just have it say health. I'm just going to do that colon and space again, and then I'm going to put my progress bar in here. But let's go ahead and change the font size. I think I landed on 48. Seems okay. Let me go ahead and make this just a bit taller. These might be massive once I start playing it, but at least we'll certainly know what everything is, right? But I was going to show you one extra thing with this, but let's go ahead and get the actual health bar in here. So in the palette, if I search for progress bar and drag that out, again, I can drag it to my horizontal box and it's going to snap right into there. And right now you might be thinking, oh, it's going the wrong way. My progress bar is vertical instead of horizontal. That's actually not true. It's just kind of maybe what it looks like. So while I have that progress bar selected, in the details, I can look for its size. And right now it's on auto, which it's not doing a very good job, right? So I'm going to switch that to fill. And now it's going to fill up the rest of my horizontal box, which is great, right? Now let's say maybe you want your progress bar to take up the whole horizontal box and then you want it to say health on top of it. I'm going to go ahead and do that really quick. So I'm going to get rid of the space and the colon. And I'm going to actually click and drag that text out and then, oh, it's still snapping. Here we go. I guess I just had to drag it to the right spot. But if you're patient with it, you can kind of drag it right onto there. And that looks roughly centered, I think. Something like that. That looks okay. Maybe it needs to come down a little bit. I think I can click on it and then use the arrow keys to kind of nudge it, maybe. Oh, does that not work anymore? That used to work. That's okay. I just need it to be... That looks okay. So it's kind of tricky, but if you wanted it to be like that, you could kind of fight the hierarchy here to make sure that that happens. That looks okay to me. But really the important thing about my progress bar now is if I look in the details, it says the color is actually blue, but here it's not, right? And maybe I don't want it to be blue. Maybe for my health, I want it to be like green because I have that health pack that has some green on it, right? So I'm trying to use some consistency here in my colors. That makes sense. So I'll hit OK. Oh, it's still not that color. It's still gray. And that's because my progress here in the details is currently at 0%. Okay, so let's go ahead and make it 100%. Oh, perfect. Now it's filled in. That's awesome. Now let's say for some reason I actually wanted it to start at 50%. So let's go ahead and type in 50. Uh-oh, it's still full. What if I did 5%? It's still full. If I do 0, it's not full. If I do 1, it's full. Okay, so what that's telling me is that this is actually a percentage between 0 and 1, right? It's a decimal number. And you might be thinking, uh-oh, that might be a problem with our health variable, which is an integer, not a decimal, right? But that's okay. All I need to do right here is just type in 1 for the percent, and I'm good. Okay, and then on that progress bar again, right next to where we typed in 1 for the percent, there's another bind option here. I'll click on create binding and it'll take me to a new binding where it has get percent and return. And it's going to be pretty much the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and cast to my character. And I'll do get player pawn. That way when I compile it, I don't have any errors. That's perfect. Okay. And then as my character, I can say get player health. And I need to make this a percentage, right? And a percentage between, a number between 0 and 1. So the easiest way to do that, since my health, my maximum health is 100, and I can double check that. I can go back to my character, right? I can open up my character blueprint and click on my player health and I see, oh yeah, my maximum is 100, right? Then I can come back over here. So to make a decimal number, to make a percentage for this, I can actually divide my current health by my maximum health, right? So if I'm at 100 and I divide by 100, I'll have 1. If I'm at 90 and divide by 100, I'll have 0.9, right? So I'll drag out from player health, and I'm going to do float space, and then I'll do a slash and another space and float. And nothing comes up, and that's okay because it's actually doing a context-sensitive search, meaning it knows I'm dragging from an integer, so it doesn't have the option to do a float divided by a float. So I'm going to go ahead and just uncheck that. Ooh, and you know what? It looks like they actually got rid of it. So it used to be I could do a couple of nodes all at once. So the node I was really looking for was to float. And I'll turn the context sensitive back on, actually. Sometimes turning that off is really nice if you're looking for a specific thing and Unreal's not being smart. It's actually being too smart. But right there, I guess they got rid of that ability to do that, which is kind of unfortunate. That was another one of my little shortcuts, but that's okay. We'll do to float. And now I have it as a float, and now I can do float divided by, oh, maybe they don't call it divide anymore like that. I guess it's operators, divide. There we go. Oh, Unreal 5 is a little bit different than 4, and I'm still getting used to it. Okay, but anyways, this is to float, so I dragged out and said to float, and then here it was the word divide, and that came up with my divide operator, okay? And right here, I'm going to type in 100, and then I'm going to just return that value up to there. and I'll compile and save. Okay, so once again, I'll do that part one more time just because it even tripped me up a little bit because I have those old habits from Unreal 4, I guess. Unless maybe can I do like float and then the word divide? Well, it converted that, but it's a safe divide. Interesting. So anyways, sorry, I'm wasting time now. So to float, make sure context sensitive is checked. There's that, and then I just did divide. And there's that. Maybe the safe divide could work, but I'll just stick with kind of the basic stuff. I've probably confused you thoroughly on that, but that's okay. There's that, and again, I want these to be all matched up, so I'll hit Q on that, and there we go. And that should be good. I'll go ahead and just jump back to my level here. And I'll hit play, and sure enough, I don't have anything on the screen. I still have it printing, which I guess works, right? But I really want this to show up on the screen. So the last step I gotta do is I gotta go over to my character. So I'll go to my content, third person, blueprints, open up my character, and on the event graph, I need to either look for or add an event begin play. You might already have an event begin play. I think one of the templates does have it at the start, but maybe not. You can always double check just by right clicking and searching for event begin play. And if you already have it, it'll take you to it, and it might be connected to some stuff. That's okay. If not, it'll just drop it in right where you right clicked, and that's also fine. So event begin play, I need to actually create my heads up display and then put it on the screen, okay? And that's why I'm doing it on the character. That way, whatever level I'm at, as soon as I start playing a new level, if I potentially have more levels, it will always put the heads up display on the screen, no matter what level I'm on, okay? So event begin play, I'm gonna do create widget. And this always tripped me up. It's called create widget, but when you add it, it's called construct. And then once you actually select the class, then it goes back to create. It's really weird. I never understood that, but just create widget and then select the class. It should be HUD. That's what I named mine. Okay, and then from there, I need to do add to viewport. I could do add to player screen. It would be the same thing. And that would be helpful if I was doing like a multiplayer game, like a split screen game. But for now, it's only one player. I'll just do add to viewport. And then I got to make sure I do the return value into target there so it knows what it's adding. So I need to create it first and then add it and plug that in. And that should be enough. Now when I hit play, you can see it. Oh, I never changed. There's something I didn't change, right? My health is kind of way over there. So let's go back to my heads up display. And if I look at my designer and find my horizontal box, you'll notice that my anchor is not right. So I'm going to go ahead and set it to the top middle. All right, so I just resized everything, and then I just double checked that my anchors were all set properly, which I forgot to do. So you can just click on each individual thing in the hierarchy here and then set the anchor. So I want this to kind of be at the top middle, so that's fine. My progress bar is inside the horizontal box, so it should follow that. My text is there as well. It looks like I might need to try and move it again just a tiny bit. Hang on, let me try one more time here. Like that. That looks pretty good. And then the anchor point is at the top middle, so that should be good. And then same with this stuff down here. The anchor point's down here. So now if I play it, it should look pretty good. I just forgot to set those anchor points. So there we go. And then if I go full screen, now you can see those anchor points actually working and keeping things where they should go. So there you go. Just double check those anchor points and then make sure you're creating that widget and adding it to the viewport, and you should see it when you're playing the game.